China.
Yeah, we don't know their intentions and what is the purpose behind them keeping such a track on things going on here. But all we know that they have been keeping a close eye on everything going in the city or in the Upper Mustang area.
The Lomantang Youth Club say they've been fighting on two fronts, not just against Chinese coming in, but also with the Nepalese government for a larger share of the tourist revenues to be reinvested here. Unless that happens, they say they will close off Mustang and block all tourists from coming in.
Last year, from our youth society, we decided that if government not give us 60%, we'll block tourists from last October, and they promised us to give 60%, but still we can't get that money.
You guys are Nepalese citizens, correct? Yes?
Yes.
Yeah, we all Nepali.
Then how come the government seems to be ignoring you guys?
I think it's because of the remote area. Here's no transportation facility. Most of the political leaders, they won't come in this area. This is border side, and there's no road and facility. If you come from the capital to here, it will take more time. That's why they ignore us, I think.
In many ways, these men are a dying breed. Every year, more and more young people leave to look for work, in Kathmandu or abroad. If they stay, most of them can expect to spend their lives tending livestock and farming. While being closed off has meant the culture has survived, it's also meant that life is hard. Most people here don't live to see their 60th birthday. There are no hospitals in Upper Mustang. When people fall seriously ill, they either pay thousands of dollars for a helicopter out, or they take their chances.
It's my point of view, it's not necessary for the road, it's necessary for the one emergency hospital in here, Lamantang and Upper Mustang. Last year, one lady, she's asleep, and she infected for the head, and she needed for the hospital. She sang for the hospital. 4 days left, she died there. If we can take for the hospital, she has life now. So that's not life. I don't think that's not really like the animals. People are going to die like animals.
We witnessed that lack of health care as we headed from Lomantang to the border with Tibet. Well, we've just had to stop for a second here and pick up an extremely sick baby. The family tells us the baby is around 13 months old. They've asked us to take them back to the village, and that's what we're doing. They had walked all day in the sun and wind to take the young child, burning up with a fever, to Lomantang. We took them as far as we could along the road that has been built. The family just went to see a local Tibetan doctor. He said there's nothing he can do for the sick child. There are no hospitals in Mustang. There are no certified physicians. This is a typical case of what happens when people are sick. They're simply going to take this boy now home to his village and hope that he somehow heals. They were now heading home to just hope for the best. As I left them at the entrance to their village, the child's grandmother burst into tears. She was scared her granddaughter would die and was angry at the government. Angry that despite millions of dollars in tourist revenue, people here have no access to health services. We left the family to drive on towards the border. But as we got closer, we were stopped at a Nepalese police checkpost. A whole new police barracks was being constructed here, completely paid for, we were told, by the Chinese government. We're still several kilometers away from the border, but we've been stopped by Nepal's border police. These officers here, they're telling us that we can't go further unless we're accompanied by 2 of their security personnel. Over the next year, there's going to be 10,000 of these guys that will be dispatched all along the Himalayan range. They're partially trained and partially funded by the Chinese government. It really underscores how paranoid the Chinese government is in regards to this Tibetan area.
They think, he's saying that they think if we go, like too many foreigners go to the border, they think that there are like, spies coming in or whatever, something like that. Like foreign intrusion.
China thinks there'll be spies coming in.
Yeah.
Joined by our police handlers, we continued on. Just before the border, evidence of Mustang's increasing dealings with China was littered everywhere. 2 times every year, around 50 trucks laden with Chinese goods comes over from the border. They set up shop here. Hundreds of thousands of US dollars is traded at this site. Traded may not be the proper word here, as it really only goes one way. Mustang people buying from Chinese traders. You can see here bottles of Chinese beer, Chinese liquor. The waste here is somewhat symbolic of the growing dependence Mustang people have on China. In the winter of 1999, it was here that the Karmapa Lama escaped Chinese-controlled Tibet, traveling on horseback in freezing temperatures. Tibet's third most important reincarnated Lama, the Karmapa is expected to become the spiritual face of Tibetan Buddhism when the Dalai Lama passes. His escape was possibly the single most humiliating incident for China's Tibet policy in decades. Since then, the Chinese have kept a close watch here.
Before the Karmapa was coming from this way, the border is very open. Local people, they can go to there and Tibet, and they can come to here. So that not, because all our monks, they're going to do pujas there. Then since the Karmapas coming down, the big border is becoming very close. Now we can't border. Even the monks very strict there.
Well, we have reached the border between the two countries. We're being told that this is as far as we can go. This headstone marks the Nepal side here, and on that side is the Chinese side. You can see the security fencing stretching for kilometers this way and that way. I was a correspondent covering China for about 5 years. I was never allowed into Tibet. This is the closest I've ever been. Many Tibetans in exile often talk to me about the high level of security that exists, and you can see it here in the form of the security fencing. There's a Chinese army base down the road on the Chinese side, and we understand they watch everything that goes on here. When the road comes, this place will change. While the people of Mustang don't know exactly how, perhaps the answer lies hundreds of kilometers away in another part of Nepal. Kodari is another border crossing between Nepal and Tibet. Like Mustang, it is also an entry point for Tibetans fleeing Chinese control. This is the largest trading passage between the two nations. There is also a heavy security presence here. Chinese secret police watch over everything.
What?
We're on Nepal. We have our major here. We have our major here. We have the major here. We have the major here. Excuse me. Excuse me, sir. Sir, excuse me. Sir. Although we were filming on Nepalese soil with a police escort, the Chinese appear to be the authorities here. This obsession with controlling its borders has led China to pour millions of dollars into Nepal's Armed Police Force, or APF. I've come to see them train in the Kathmandu Valley. $20,000 of them are to be deployed to the border areas, including Mustang. China is paying hard cash for this. $20 million of military aid. Although they were happy for us to film their exercises, no one from the APF would answer questions about their funding on camera. or respond to a number of allegations accusing them of extrajudicial killings, beatings, and torture.
First thing, you have to realize that Nepal is next door to Tibet. And for China, Tibet is always that very kind of volatile region, you know.
China's primary interest is Tibet, and ensuring that there is a strong central government in Kathmandu that cracks down on Tibetan protesters and does not allow unrest from Tibetan refugees to destabilize either Tibet or the region.
Policing the almost 1,500 kilometer long border with China will be a massive task. And China's intention to even try speaks volumes about its interests in Nepal.
The Himalayas are so huge and big, and how do you police them? I mean, like, it's impossible. The terrain, the length, the size, it's impossible to police the Himalayas. But the fact that they have been mobilized at all is a huge political statement that Nepal will have to be careful about Chinese sensitivities.
This shows that the Chinese want to penetrate into the bureaucracy as well and ensure that even if sections of the top leadership, the top political leadership is not being sensitive to its interests, the Chinese can directly ask sections of the police and sections of the Home Ministry and sections of the bureaucracy to cater to their security interests.
The APF have also been sent in to baton charge Tibetan protesters in Kathmandu. It raises questions about Nepalese sovereignty. The Nepalese government has been accused of selling out and doing China's bidding in exchange for aid.
We have very good relation with China. We want to protect it. And the problem of Tibetan is the problem of China. And we are doing according to the international principle of democracy and human rights here. Not more than that.
The Chinese embassy in Kathmandu is the most powerful embassy, even compared to American embassy or Indian embassy. And they have only one agenda: how to restrain, if possible, control Tibetan in Nepal.
Tibetans living in Nepal are worried about China's growing influence here. In 2008, ahead of the Olympic Games in Beijing, many of Nepal's 20,000-strong Tibetan community took to the streets to show their support for protests taking place in Tibet's capital, Lhasa. Despite Nepalese security making dozens of arrests, the media coverage angered and embarrassed China. Since those demonstrations, China has put pressure on the Nepalese government to crack down on Tibetan exiles. Arbitrary arrests and beatings are commonplace. Now Tibetan activists in Kathmandu have to meet in secret, on rooftops, in people's houses. Punk is a leader in the underground movement. He's been arrested more than 60 times. He's taking a risk just speaking to us.
They have beat us. They have even the Nepali police have broken our friends' legs, and these all are like humiliation. It's all about the Chinese pressure on the Nepal government.
Any gathering of Tibetans without government approval is now illegal. Refugees caught crossing the border have been deported back to China. There has never been a more dangerous time to be a Tibetan in Nepal.
Many Tibetans, when we speak each other, the slogan is that now Nepal is part of China. It's more like for Tibetans like us, Nepal is like a part of China. There is a lot of restriction on us. Same like in Tibet. So this is the case.
What's happening in Nepal, Punk says, is a direct consequence of China's desire to dominate Asia.
Tibet is a huge land, it's a huge land, and it was connected with the South Asian borders. Then that is why they captured Tibet. Not only for natural resource, it's very easy to conquer Asia. We can see the influence, we can see the Chinese influence in Pakistan, of course, Nepal right now, Burma, Myanmar. It's a greed, and Chinese leaders' greed doesn't stop. Communist leaders' greed doesn't stop.
During our time in Nepal, I repeatedly requested an interview with the Chinese embassy in Kathmandu. They refused to speak to us. They were preparing to bring in a new ambassador, a heavy hitter with a national security background. Back in Mustang, it was time to meet the king. At 78, King Jigme Palbar Bista has seen his land change beyond recognition. He's watched Tibet fall to China and seen his kingdom cut off from what for centuries was its cultural and spiritual lifeline. Nepal's government abolished this monarchy 3 years ago.
Sir, it's a pleasure to meet you.
King Jigme will be the last of a line of kings that goes back to the 12th century. He's too old now to speak at any length, but there was one question I felt needed to be asked. Your wife is from Tibet. You had the Karmapa come through the border at Kerala Pass. Where do you stand on the freedom of Tibet? Do you believe it should be free of occupation or control? Through his interpreter, he told me, it is the right of every citizen to be free in the land where they were born. It was time for me to leave Upper Mustang. Not by horse, but by helicopter. The journey this time would take just a few hours, not days. When you first arrive here, you're overwhelmed by the sheer beauty of this place and its people, but spend some time here as we have, and you get a sense that within this peaceful landscape, there are major forces at play, whether it be economic or political. And these forces, unfortunately, may be bringing an end to what is one of the world's most pure and ancient cultures. The hope is that an essence of this culture may somehow be preserved. For me, it's been an incredible privilege to come here, to listen to the stories that people here have told me. In many ways, the story of Upper Mustang and its place in the world is an important one. By strange twists in history, geography, and fate, its people have found themselves as some of the last custodians of an important spiritual identity. But in life, nothing lasts forever. I feel I've had a chance to document a unique place at a unique time, as these people stand on a precipice, staring at a very different future. It will surely be a difficult road ahead.
In a series of original documentaries,